The secret to securing simping success lives in this video, so stay tuned. I'm Lord Edgington of Goonsberry, and this is History's Super Simps. Let's dive in and start some shenanigans. Quick pitch, this is probably your last chance to subscribe before I hit 100 subscribers. That's a massive hipster flex. Just imagine it. Yeah, I was one of his first 100 subs. Are you even a fan? Thanks to all my subscribers, by the way. Let's move on, though. Let's quickly define our terms. A simp is internet slang describing a person, typically a man, who displays excessive attention, affection, or deference towards another person, often someone they are romantically interested in, with little or no reciprocity. It can also just be used to describe putting someone on a pedestal. In other words, Greg. We've all met Greg. He's a good guy. Greg is, however, unfortunately convinced that Pokimane will leave her boyfriend and learn the error of her ways once he's donated enough money to her. Greg lost his house last October. Greg wasn't the first, and he won't be the last. So let's review historical Gregs, starting with Napoleon. Before we continue, I have a time-lapse map showing Napoleon's conquest. The text is much less important, so don't get too hung up on that. It's just the major events that aided Napoleon's world domination. Napoleon, well-known short king and Frenchman, was introduced to his Josephine while he began the climb of his power, and while she searched for a life raft. She was 32 and had just missed the guillotine of the French Revolution by an inch. She had rotting teeth and needed a suitor to care for her and her two children post-haste. In walked Napoleon, an up-and-coming soldier from humble beginnings. She dismissed his affection right away, calling him a puss in boots and referring to his family as a family of beggars. The 23-year-old French Sun Tzu dismissed her dismissals and pursued her anyway, which only truly worked when he orchestrated a bloodless coup, leaving him in charge of the French Empire. He set about conquering his neighbors next. Josephine's eyes, however, always wandered, and despite any evidence, Napoleon would not see her infidelity. Yes, Josephine couldn't keep her legs closed while he cascaded over the continent in his conquest. I wonder how he must have felt.
I'm so lonely.
After he built and then lost a great empire, Napoleon was banished to a small island to die. His last words were, "France, the army, the head of the army, Josephine." Our next subject is Sir William Hamilton. This simping cuck relationship is defined more by his fascinating wife, Emma Lyons, than him. Emma Lyons was bought and sold as a mistress between wealthy men starting at the age of 15. At 22, she was told she would be going on vacation to Naples. In reality, she had been sold once again by a wealthy man to another. She was purchased by Sir William Hamilton, who was 51 at the time. He married her a few years later in the Neapolitan court, where Emma met and befriended Queen Marie Carolina, the sister of Marie Let Them Eat Cake Antoinette. From this point, Emma's fame and connections grew at an exponential rate. Prints of her beauty were sold as far away as London. Then she met Lord Admiral Horatio Nelson, the namesake of the cheap but quality off-brand Captain Morgan rum, Admiral Nelson. It is believed that after a short courtship, the two began a passionate affair. It was an open secret, with tabloids openly mocking the now elderly Sir Hamilton for turning a blind eye to his wife's infidelity. In truth, Sir Hamilton loved her and was willing to pretend Emma and himself were happily married, so long as she did not leave him, even going so far as to let her side dick move in and have two daughters with him, Emma and Horatia. Yes, Emma named her daughter Emma, and Emma too was actually Emma Prime's second daughter named Emma. Emma Prime had Emma 1 before Emma Prime moved to Naples. If this seems confusing, it's because it is. Don't name your kids after yourself. Twice. Seriously though, only douchebags name their kid Junior. The three lived in relative peace until Hamilton's death in 1803, Nelson's in 1805, and Emma's in 1815. Shout out to Emma. She started at the bottom and now she's on top of Lord Nelson. Also, final note, Who names a girl Horatia, except to dab on your cuck husband like this is Horatio's daughter? Kind of a dick move. Our third historical super simp position belongs to King Edward VIII of England, or by his full name, Edward Albert Christian George Andrew Patrick David Windsor, the royal family's last name. Honestly, sounds like somebody had a stroke while naming him and just kept going. But it does open the opportunity for you to name your son Patrick, Edward, Nicholas, Isaac, Samuel, if you were so inclined. King Edward VIII, or Edward Prince of Wales as he was known before his father's death and ascending the throne, was known to carry on and party in Paris. There he met a Parisian courtesan named Marguerite Alibert, which, for those that don't know, a courtesan typically refers to a high-class or fancy prostitute, which Alibert was formerly a prostitute. So now I'm really curious, how does one rank up from a prostitute to a courtesan? Is there some sort of experience threshold?
You have gained a level. Arise, fancy whore.
Edward Albert Christian George Andrew Patrick David Windsor Prince of Wales became infatuated with Alibert and wrote her many scandalous letters, the 20th century equivalent of sending dick pics. He later broke off the affair and she married an Egyptian man, Ali Fahmy, in January of 1923. She murdered Ali at the Savoy Hotel in London, July 1st, 1923, not even a full 6 months after their marriage. Fortunately for Marie Alibert, she had saved the prince's scandalous letters, leading some to theorize that this is how she secured her acquittal for her husband's murder. A real standout scene from her trial includes her testimony of the brutality and beastliness of her Oriental husband, which, what does it say about me that I'm annoyed that she couldn't even get the racism right? That's not even the correct racial slur here. Lord Edgington, bigot confirmed. Okay, so I looked it up just to check. I always thought the Orient referred to Asia, but apparently it refers to the Middle East and sometimes also Asia, just anywhere east of Europe, really. So I am going to have to take away my bigot confirmed award. Aww. I know. So I took way too long to explain that side quest to highlight Prince Edward's poor judgment, which he carried from his youth into his adulthood, frequently having affairs with married women and embarrassing the royal family, to the point that Prince Edward's father, King George V, allegedly favored his second son, Prince Albert, nicknamed Bertie, and Prince Albert's daughter, Elizabeth, nicknamed Lilibet, for the throne. King George V went so far as to tell a courtier, which is an attendant to a royal, "I pray to God that my eldest son will never marry and have children, and that nothing will come between Bertie and Lilibet and the throne." Around this time, Prince Edward also joked calling Prince Albert's wife Queen Elizabeth, which would come true, and have led some to speculate that perhaps he had planned on abdicating long before taking the throne. And yes, Prince Albert's wife, Elizabeth, named her daughter Elizabeth, again with this naming your daughter after yourself. So this has all been building to King George V dying in 1936, and Prince Edward taking the throne, becoming King Edward VIII. King Edward had a problem right away. He had fallen in love with Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American aristocrat. King Edward had denied to his father that she was his mistress, despite his staff catching them engaged in the sexual act and reporting this to King George V. A member of his staff stated Edward was slavishly dependent on Wallis, finding her domineering manner and abrasive irreverence towards his position appealing. She was still married, and even if she divorced, as the King of England and head of the Church of England, he could not marry a divorced woman if her spouse was still alive. He tried desperately to circumvent his inability to marry Wallis, even suggesting a morgantic marriage, where upon his death, neither she nor their children would be allowed to ascend to the throne, passing instead to Albert or his children. The British cabinet rejected this, forcing King Edward to abdicate his throne and marry Wallis in 1936. His reign was 326 days, the shortest in British history. In 1937, Wallis and Edward, against the advice of the British government, toured Germany. Edward was reported to have given his heart to the crowd, as Elon would say, to German officials, including the Führer. Why tour Germany? Well, Wallis's former lover, Joachim von Ribbentrop was the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Nazi Party. She allegedly kept a signed photo of him by her bedside table. So, to recap, King Edward gave up the throne of England, only to be cucked by Nazi cock. Sad. Perhaps it's for the best. Hitler was quoted as saying, "I am certain, through him, permanent friendly relations could have been achieved. If he had stayed, everything would be different. His abdication was a severe loss for us." So probably for the best that the Hitler-approved candidate didn't keep the throne. Our final historical super simp is a complicated man.
And his name is John Lennon!
John married his first wife, Cynthia Powell, in 1962, against her better judgment after taking Lennon back following several instances of physical abuse. They welcomed their son, Julian Lennon, into their lives April 8th of 1963. The Beatles had really started to hit mainstream appeal just before Julian's birth, and Cynthia had been going above and beyond her support of Lennon and the Beatles, leading up to and beyond Beatlemania sweeping the United Kingdom and the US. She had also tolerated John's verbal and physical abuses, as well as his frequent infidelity, remaining loyal and supportive to him the entire time. A real ride or die. Lennon met Yoko Ono in 1966 at an art gallery. They quickly began an affair. Cynthia confronted John about letters from Ono that she had found in 1968, just before John left for his trip to India. During his return trip from India, Lennon got drunk and confessed what Cynthia had already known. He described his numerous liaisons with women, from groupies to fellow famous musicians like Joan Baez. He suggested she take a vacation to Greece to clear her head, while the Beatles recorded their next album, which turned out to be the White Album. Cynthia returned early from vacation to find John and Yoko staring into each other's eyes in matching white robes. Cynthia endured John's blatant infidelity once more. However, John was in love with Yoko Ono, and soon he sued for divorce. Cynthia never moved on, and always maintained that she loved John and would have forgiven him. She carried a torch for John, as they say, until her death. John was quoted as saying, "When I fell in love with Yoko, I knew, my God, this is different than anything I've ever known. This is more than a hit record. This is more than gold, more than anything." John and Cynthia's divorce was finalized November 8th of 1968, and Lennon married Yoko in March 20th of 1969. Immediately, the pair invented slacktivism. They stayed in bed during bed-ins. They encouraged young people to grow their hair and stay home from work, as if it wasn't a luxury that only rich people could afford. There's also this very famous photo of a maid making the bed while they just kind of awkwardly stand next to it that I just love. However, Yoko did not agree with the other Beatles like Cynthia had, leading to several skirmishes between her and several bandmates, primarily Paul McCartney.
Anybody else want a drink?
Yes.
The Beatles broke up September 20th, 1969, 6 months to the day after Lennon and Yoko's marriage. Paul and Lennon, once best friends, were not on speaking terms for some time after the breakup of the Beatles. Lennon rarely saw his son Julian once his divorce was finalized, causing him to become estranged from his quickly growing progeny. In 1972, Yoko ruined the historic co-performance of Chuck Berry and John Lennon playing Memphis, Tennessee and Johnny B. Good on The Mike Douglas Show. Yoko repeatedly artistically screamed during the song, nearly causing Chuck Berry to lose his composure. Luckily, a savvy, quick-thinking sound engineer had the foresight to mute Yoko's microphone before Chuck Berry rightfully strangled her in front of Lennon. Chuck Berry was a hero of Lennon's, so it would have been interesting to see how it played out. Lennon, I'm so glad she gone. Me too, Chuck Berry. I'm so sick of her. Give me a big hug. Oh. You taste like lemon, John Lennon. In mid-1973, due to increasingly frequent fights, likely caused by the couple's codependent constant contact, Yoko suggested that the couple separate. and she encouraged John to spend time with their assistant, May Pang. So Lennon and May Pang began to May Bang in a period that John later referred to as his lost weekend. Pang was ironically the most beneficial and positive relationship in John's life up to this point. She encouraged him to reconnect with his son Julian. Pang even became friends with Cynthia at this time. Pang pushed John to mend fences with McCartney, and like a whirlwind of positive influence, she helped John and his father bury the hatchet. By mid-1974, John had quit drinking, saw his family and friends more frequently, including frequent visits and letter correspondence with his son. Then, in December 1974, Lennon and Pang were planning to buy a house and move in together permanently. Lennon was refusing to take Ono's calls, likely free of her curse and her claws. However, Yoko devised a ploy to meet with John. He didn't return to he and Pang's apartment that evening. Worried, Pang called the next day. Yoko answered, saying John was busy and exhausted. 2 days later, Lennon reappeared with Yoko, stating that his separation from Ono had ended. Pang believed that John had been brainwashed or drugged, as he did not seem himself. 9 months later, October 9th, 1975, Yoko and John's son, Sean, was born on, ironically, John Lennon's 35th birthday. Sean's birth triggered Lennon to transition from full-time musician to dutiful house husband, focusing on Sean while Ono pursued her career, which was just more of the same screams. Okay, enough of that. For the next 5 years, John dutifully and slavishly supported Yoko like a brainwashed zombie. Until his murder, December 8th of 1980, by Mark David Chapman. Yoko forced Julian to purchase the letters that he had sent his father at auction. She held no funeral for Lennon, only a silent vigil. This is a sad story full of several simps, Cynthia, John, and to a lesser extent, May Pang, all succumbing to Yoko's simple snare. Well, to anyone who stuck around this long,
y'all want anything from the gas station?
You are my brother. As always, I want to hear what people want to see next. I've got a few options besides you just being my personal ChatGPT video idea generator. Cringe Commander Part 2, History's Greatest Gooners Part 3, or breaking the Reddit downvote record, The Road to Negative Karma. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.